Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, Aryasinha, says that the government has directed its attention in repatriating Sri Lankan migrant workers as well as students stranded overseas on priority basis. A new cabinet decision was reached yesterday regarding the repatriation of stranded Sri Lankan students and migrant workers. Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations, Aryasinha, made these remarks in an exclusive interview with the national television today.
The Foreign Ministry's view always has been that repatriation, when it started, should be done on the basis of maximum vulnerability. It is on that basis that we recommended that South Asian students be prioritized, and that was concluded only about a week ago. Now several other groups of students also have been brought back and are being brought back, but yesterday's cabinet paper's significance was re-emphasizing something we said in our very original cabinet paper over a month ago, that foreign migrant workers are a category which are in dire straits in certain countries, and that therefore in parallel with any student movements that we must also pay attention and get back those who are in greatest vulnerability. And in this context, I see the Maldives, where a lot of Sri Lankans want to come back, particularly about 1,000 to 1,005 living in Malay Island are the most vulnerable. That is one. Then in places like Kuwait, in addition to whatever vulnerability from COVID, there is also an amnesty declared by the Kuwaiti government, and we are conscious that there is anxiety on the part of foreign employees that if they lose this amnesty, they will have greater difficulty coming out. The Kuwaiti government at this point is going to fly them back to Sri Lanka. So today, in fact, the foreign minister, with the strength of yesterday's cabinet paper, is going to engage, approval of cabinet, is going to engage with his Kuwaiti counterpart and will be discussing a process by which Sri Lankans in Kuwait can respect that amnesty offer. Our perception is that we must start the process, but that the Kuwait government is very conscious that we can't bring all the people who are wanting to come at this point. Therefore, we will have to, between the two governments, have some negotiation on how we face that out. Then there is also the problems of Sri Lankans, expatriates, workplaces like Bangladesh. Again, a very sensitive place where COVID is spreading at a very rapid rate. There are more than 1,000 people there, and out of those 1,000, I think about 300 and plus women and children. So we have to find a way how we can reduce that number facing vulnerability and eventually try to ensure that they face done away and totally eliminated. The cabinet paper was the second aspect, or first aspect was this bringing back people. The second aspect of the cabinet paper was equally important because it related to the quarantine facility. Because if we are bringing people, particularly people who are coming, who are doing work as housemaids and other categories, they can't afford to go to quarantine hotels. Therefore, we have to ensure that the quarantine facility is kept for them and tie that up with their movement back to Sri Lanka. So that is the second point which the cabinet paper made, to increase facilitation in the quarantine centers. And thirdly, the cabinet paper referred to the continued diplomatic representations to sustain the large number of migrant workers in their current places of domicile, and also to ensure that there is continued supply of dry rations to those most needy of them. This is something the missions have been doing over the past few weeks, and I think that is very important at this juncture, because there are small issues which come up from time to time, which intervention is necessary to tide out. Whether it's with a landlord who is demanding rent and you talk and try to get it pushed back, whether it is a business partner who is demanding back some payment due, whether it is somebody who is seeking shelter and fixing a family for them to stay with, or someone who hasn't a meal and wants some dry rations. So our missions across the world, not only in the Middle East, are providing that assistance to all Sri Lankans abroad. Naturally, our capacity will be limited, but together with Sri Lankan organizations as well as other philanthropic organizations in those countries and churches and religious bodies, we are trying to fulfill that requirement.
Foreign Relations Secretary Aryasinha also briefed on necessary information that the Sri Lankans expected to return to the country should be aware prior to placing the request for their repatriation.
And a migrant meaning as someone working abroad, and also those are the ones who have to really take a choice. There is also a category of about 3,000 people out there who are there on short-term visits and stuck. They don't have that choice. They have to come back home. But to those who have a choice, my advice has all along been that to make an objective assessment of one's circumstances. Somebody who is, say, in a country where schools are functioning and term is on might lose out education if that person tries to move around, you know. The same way somebody who is in a job in whatever, Middle East or any country, blue collar, white collar, whatever, at this point when you come back, you might get that job, not get that job back because everybody is scaling down. Now if you don't have a job already, then I can see the logic. But I think it is important that people also out there understand that when you come here, there won't be jobs. Because in Sri Lanka also we are going to find problems of unemployment. So adding to that unemployment will be a problem, not only to the country, but to the individual as well. So our plea through our missions to people out there is that they measure this very carefully, and those who want to come back, we will prioritize them in an objective way, not by looking at faces or connections, but by looking at the real necessity of their repatriation at this point and our capacity to bring them and quarantine them so that they are not a danger to those in the country and they don't unnecessarily expose themselves to danger on the way in and in this transition.